Hard Rockology Show. Chris and Matt back in with you. The name of the song was called Tempest by Storm of Perception. And the guy taking care of business for this band right now, he used to work with Guns N' Roses, Great White. I want to welcome to the show Mr. Alan Niven. Alan, thanks for taking time out to talk to Hard Rockology.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
Alan, I just got to sit there and say it's a pleasure to finally have a chance to talk to you. I mean, you've had the opportunity to work with probably some of my favorite bands, Guns N' Roses and Great White, but we'll talk about that a little bit later on the show. Right now, you're in Arizona. You just started up Tru-B-Dor Records, and you got some bands signed to that the label. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about, basically, you got out of L.A., you moved over to Arizona, Phoenix, Prescott, I guess you could say.
Prescott's about halfway between Flagstaff and Phoenix, and it's up in the mountains, and it's really beautiful here. And when it's 115 down in Phoenix, it's only 100 degrees here. And we get seasons, so my old English bones appreciate that, because growing up I got used to a seasonal sense of time, and it's really nice because the weather's different every week here. It's a really lovely place to be, and it's a place where I retreated from LA because I'd got to a point where dreams I dare not even imagine had manifested, and I'd also got to a point where I was wondering what the hell any of it was worth. And they say you find that which you seek in the desert, so I came out here for peace and to restore my head, because I was a little shell-shocked after the 80s. It was a bit intense.
So, I mean, you take a respite from the industry, from the whole thing being shell stock and stuff. What inspired you in the past 3 or 4 years to sit there and go, hey, let's try to get back into this and let's start a record label?
There were two things primarily. One was the enthusiasm of my partner, Heather, who brought an innocent and almost a naive enthusiasm to the idea that I recognized that I'd once had. And the other thing was I got sick to death of just sitting around on the deck complaining about how lame the industry was and how they were fucking everything up. You know, I go into LA and I look around, and the last thing I hear myself saying is, really like what you've done with the place. I mean, you know, the music industry today is really sad, and there are a lot of elements and reasons for it. But after a while, you get sick of hearing yourself say, why are they fucking up so bad? Why don't we hear anything worth hearing? And on top of that, despite the fact that I live in Arizona on the top of a mountain, miles from anywhere and anyone, it was interesting how many people made the effort to try and find us and ask for help. And my partner found a couple of things that to me were absolutely undeniable in their talent and their latency and potency that they had. And so we looked at each other and said, well, you know, whatever we can do, let's do something instead of just complaining. So we started with a kid called Chris Buck, who Heather found on Facebook, of all things. You know, I'm lying in my bedroom reading a book, and she comes in, she's Southern Belle, and she goes, honey, come listen to this boy play guitar on my computer. And I'm saying, really? What have you found? Oh, there's this boy who's playing in his bedroom. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, darling, do you have any idea how many kids are playing in their bedrooms? And I get the evil eye, you know, and it's like, okay, I'll be right there. Went and looked at what she'd found, and it was immediate, the recognition that he was somebody who had a remarkable skill. And at that time, he was only 16, and where his sense of eloquence and articulation came from at that age is really befuddling to me. I don't know how somebody plays with that maturity that early in their life. But he's a really, really special player. I think suffice to say, you know, whereas everyone and anyone will share their stage with Slash, he's not that prone to share his. And he's already had Chris play with him a couple of times. And it was just magical when they did, because instead of being competitive, they were really conversational. They're both truly articulate and special players. But that's where we started. We started with Chris. He had a trio. Eventually, he formed a trio. We were not in a hurry to push him out to work, because at age 16, you're not ready to take on the world and the business. And he needed time to form his own character and his personality some more, as well as the character and the personality of his playing. But eventually he formed a trio, and we spent almost 2 years developing material, only to have it blow up just as we were about ready to record. And at which point I looked at Heather and I said, well, you know, he's got no band, he's got no material anymore, because it's all compromised since it was all co-written with the singer. There's only one thing we can do with him, and that's make a record, because if we don't, we may well lose him to depression, and he may just go into his bedroom in his parents' house, and we'll never see him again. So we put him on a plane, flew him out to Arizona, put a band around him immediately, and broke all the rules. The rules being production, pre-production, and slammed him into a studio with a band, and got him to record his first album, which is Chris Buck and the Bighorns, to make sure that he knew that there was a future and that we still believed in him. And since then, he found Sally Ann Evans.
Yeah, that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about, because it's you get him in the studio, and it's almost like you have an ear for talent. You're sitting there, and you're in your bedroom, and your wife comes in there and says, hey, you got to listen.
He's reading a book too, Matt.
Yeah, he's reading a book too. And you're sitting there, and all of a sudden your wife comes in.
Is that unusual in rock and roll, guys?
No, hell,
it depends on what kind of book. You have to read a book to get away from rock and roll once in a while.
Hell, I read shit all the time.
Yeah, hell yeah, you do.
I mean, there's nothing like, you can read everything you want on the internet, but reading it in a book makes it that much more the real, I guess I'm saying. But no, I'm sitting there saying, I know you did this with Great White, and you found this young guy as well, too, a phenomenal guitar player. But like you said, you got him in the studio, but how Evans came into the picture, to me, is kind of fascinating. So can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Has she actually got involved with the whole situation?
Obviously, we were looking around for people of a talent and a standard. And, you know, it's all very well calling up Paul Rodgers and go, you know, Paul, we've got a guitar player who you really should be playing with. But that's not going to happen. And sometimes you just have to admit that the universe or fate or whatever you want to call it plays their cards. And Chris had been invited to open for Sandy Tom, who's a sort of folk artist in the UK and used to be Joe Bonamassa's girlfriend, open a show up in Soho. And we said, by all means, you know, it's low key, go and do it, and let's just see if we can find somebody who can maybe sing a song or two with you. And Chris mentioned that he'd been at a Christmas party, and there was this girl with this amazing voice, and we said, well, what the hell? Ask her. And they got together for rehearsal, and they sent a video clip over the rehearsal, and I swear to God, you're 30 minutes into the video clip, and you go, what is in the water in Wales? Here is another Welsh voice that just knocks your socks off. One that's, you know, rich, deep, got great texture, utterly soulful. And they went and did this thing together and filmed it, and it was just a knockout. So from that point on, it was, let's work with Sally.
And listening from what I've heard so far and what those two have put together, I think it's phenomenal. Her voice is phenomenal, match his guitar playing, and you're exactly right. I don't know what the hell's coming out of that area over there, but there's some phenomenal singers, and the fact that you were able to find her to complement his guitar playing, I think right there in and of itself is a coup. So
totally serendipitous. Can't take any self-satisfying credit for it whatsoever. It just happened, and it was wonderful. We actually flew him over here. We did we had a terrible disaster out here a year or so back when 19 firefighters lost their lives just south of town. And of course, when you lose 19 people out of a town this size, everybody knows somebody. You know, two of the deceased, you know, graduated with my oldest son. So we put on a benefit, and Chris and Sally came out to play the benefit, and they took the stage, and nobody had a clue who they were. You know, we're Mountain Town, Arizona. We're playing in the rodeo grounds, and by the end of their set, they got a standing ovation from 2,500 people. You know, they are just undeniable together. It's the real deal.
So what do we have to expect from those two? Have we got a new album coming out in the near future?
Well, yeah, obviously at some point we want to get to an album, but in this day and age, I'm very reticent to throw an album together and then you pop it out and it's come and gone in 15 minutes, no matter how good it is, because people's attention spans seem to be so short these days, and especially if you're dealing with something new. So the marketing strategy, and I hate to talk about, use words like marketing strategy when we're talking about something that's inherently magical, which is making great music. But bottom line is that what we're doing is we're doing 1 or 2 tracks and doing videos for them, and then another 1 or 2 tracks and doing videos for them, and building up their identity over in the United Kingdom. And when we get to a point where there's an anticipation for a record, then it'll get done. But at this point, it seems to me that to record a debut record by an unknown and go out there and battle with it, you're just going to be hitting your head against the wall. It seems to me that if there is a strategy that you can use with social media, take a lesson from the late 50s and the early 60s, where bands used to put out a single, and then another 45, and then another 45, and if they lasted long enough, their singles would be accumulated into something called an album. And I think that's, another place where we can learn a little bit from history and apply it to the present circumstance, and just treat the development of the band as if we were in a singles era. But basically, my thing is, don't just put out audio tracks, even if it is only a lyric video. Go AV every time.
All right, Alan. So why don't we go ahead and take a break real quick? We're speaking with Alan Niven, legendary manager, producer for bands of Guns N' Roses, Great White, also Buck and Evans. So, Alan, why don't you go ahead and introduce a track from Buck and Evans?
Well, that would be fantastic. Let's choose Moonlight, which was recorded live at the Rockfield Studios in Wales.
I hear your voice, I know it's here to stay.